few short minutes, so I'm not going to waste any time and jump straight into it. I'm going to blow through just the real quick foundational information so we understand what the propositions were about and the criteria that was supposed to be used. The Citizens Redistricting Commission was a 14-member panel, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 declined states. To pass any given set of maps, you needed 3 affirmative votes from each of those subcategories. The propositional criteria, as intended, was nonpartisan and neutral. The criteria was rank ordered, and you weren't supposed to violate a higher ranking criteria to achieve a lower rank. They're listed on the screen. Achieving equal population was the first and foremost goal. That's what redistricting is, making sure that one representative has an equal number of people to represent. The Voting Rights Act was the second most important criteria, and everything that you see in red on the screen were parts of that act that the Commission violated. The last two, compactness and 2 whole, complete, and adjacent assembly districts were supposed to make up 1 Senate district. This is called nesting. The Commission only successfully nested 3 out of 40 Senate districts. So instead of nesting, which is kind of a neutral, more objective way to do it, we opted for something we could term blending, which meant we could just cut and paste whatever communities or areas we wanted to create a Senate district. So 3 out of 40 we were successfully able to do. Criteria number 4 that you saw said that we have to give equal weight to communities of interest, actually local communities of interest, to city lines, county lines, and neighborhoods. And this is where, this is the state definition of a community of interest, a contiguous population, which shares common social and economic interests. Again, the proposition added the word local to that definition. And this is where things went really afoul. The black hole of community of interest was endlessly broad and easy to manipulate. This standard put wiggle room, a lot of wiggle room, into the process that the propositions were supposed to take out. Pollution, flight paths, health issues, mountain ranges, ethnicity, whole counties were actually seen as communities of interest instead of counties. On the 24th of June, one of the commissioners stated, "I think this is a very large, what is it, 200 and something thousand people? It's a very large community of interest." Again, ignoring the word local. This is an example of that in Los Angeles. So here we have the Los Angeles port, and that was tied up into Compton, Southgate, areas like that. So rather than have a nice coastal district, we cut and sliced into airports, ports, and aligned those with inner city districts. And one of the major deliberative moments for that was on the 24th of June, when it was advocated, quote, "It would be perceived as the coastal region would be capturing 2 incredible assets, the airport and the port." So that's something that we've heard considerable testimony about, distributing economic resources and assets equitably among districts. So obviously that wasn't in the criteria list that I saw. Imperial County. So I only have time to use 2 examples to illustrate our points here. And we're going to use Imperial County as one. So Imperial County is, it's real easy because it's a corner. You can't go south, you can't go east. You have to go west or north. And the county line runs right here through the Salton Sea. So this, to draw a district at any level, go this way or this way. It makes it simple. This is the Assembly District. And the fight here was in Coachella Valley. They provided a lot of testimony saying, hey, our economy is based on tourism. Don't combine us with an agricultural-heavy county because we'll get an agricultural representative that won't be responsive to our tourist needs. And the assembly level, that's how it was drawn. I'm going to go ahead and read for you really quickly the deliberative process that was used to establish this district. 8 July, page 31. We have all these San Diegans saying that they had absolutely nothing in common with the Imperial County, that they were a rural, not a farm worker community. We had members of the East Coachella. Why can't we be united with Imperial, which has a community of interest of Latinos and farm workers? And that San Diego is much more dissimilar in terms of communities of interest than linking Coachella with Imperial. 8 July, Commissioner Geary, go beyond the community of interest, which I agree came to us from both sides. But we need to look at the history of political disenfranchisement for the communities. Again, a new standard that wasn't on the propositions, especially the farm worker communities, and work towards a policy of more fair and effective representation. Again, the propositions were about equal population. The contribution of farm workers is largely unrecognized, but in this particular area of Imperial and Coachella, we were informed that they generate approximately $5 billion worth of product that not only feed LA, but the state and the world, in fact. So the community of interest is actually one of survival for farm workers. So I would argue that this map not only shows the connection between Imperial Valley and Coachella, but in the terms of farm worker survival, that the orbit of survival is from Palos Verdes all the way to Yuma, Arizona. So I would argue that the distinction between Coachella is one of class, that there is a class that is generally powerless, disenfranchised, suffers from and is impacted by lots of negative social realities, and so on and so forth. So this was established as a matter of survival and feeding the world. Now we go into the congressional level and Senate districts. And all of a sudden, you'll notice that Imperial County has nothing to do with Coachella Valley. And instead, this little finger here is drawn up and carves out real precisely through San Diego County. And there's a whole host of different advocacy for that. But clearly, depending on what level map it is, we've got a whole different frame of reference and a whole different deliberative thought. There's a whole lot of reasons why these were drawn that way, but we don't have time to go into those today. Sorry, we've got to manipulate between screens here. Go. It's important to note that both the southern counties that were drawn were majority minority Latino districts. So depending on what level you were, those were both crafted that way. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. This was the number 2 criteria, that a minority group, if it's sufficiently large and geographically compact, to constitute a majority in one district, it has to be drawn. These other 2 criteria are simply established with racially polarized voting, and that was established in Los Angeles. This is a map of Los Angeles, and it's a little demographic map. And where you see these pink areas, these are the most African-American dense areas of Los Angeles. And so with the understanding of the Voting Rights Act, as we just read it, as it was briefed to the Commission by our lawyers, areas like this here are should be one community and drawn as one district. But you can see that the district line cuts through and segments that African-American community there. And same thing here. Now, if you compare this to what was done in Orange County, if you look at all 3 levels of maps, you'll see that there's one area that's consistent and looks just like it did 10 years ago, and that's Santa Ana Anaheim district. And in that case, that was drawn as a protected majority-minority district, even though that district actually contains 2 distinct and separate dense Latino groups. There's one in Anaheim that's located centrally in Anaheim, and one in Santa Ana. But the Commission found that there's 20% Latino groups in between, so we can see that all as one, and therefore we had to draw that district, and that affected the entire rest of Orange County on all 3 maps. But in this case, here we have a contiguous minority group that should be drawn in VR district, and it's sliced right through. So my contention is clearly that the Commission broke the VRA federal law. The Commission did not apply the Voting Rights Act in LA, and creating at least one African-American VRA district, which, by the way, we were briefed by our counsel. Commission used extra constitutional criteria combined with a malleable definition of a community of interest to race gerrymander Los Angeles. Used race as a primary factor to draw 3 African-American influence districts. And this is important because the 14th Amendment says it provides equal protection. We are not allowed by law to consider race as a primary factor in any district that's not a Voting Rights Act protected district. So as soon as they ruled LA out, looked at that map and said, we're not going to draw a Voting Rights Act district, race can no longer be a primary consideration. We'll look and see if we're successful at that. So considering those maps I showed you, actually let me go ahead and just show you the actual maps that were approved really quick, so you have those in your mind's eye. So this is the map of Los Angeles as it ended up being. You'll see that we have Malibu connected all the way to Palos Verdes through a thin little strand here, Dockweiler Beach, 0.4 miles wide. What we had is we had a number of advocacy groups, African American Redistricting Coalition, NAACP, coming forward and advocating to draw these 3 districts here that contain 30% African American vote. Their premise was that the Voting Rights Act can be used as a tool against African Americans by taking away some of their current representation. But the problem was is that their population from 10 years ago was dramatically less. They didn't have the population to support 3 congressional districts. So they wanted to split the difference by engineering a 30-30-30 plan, knowing that the influx in population was Latino, which they claimed didn't vote in strong numbers. So it would still give them the opportunity to protect their incumbents at these levels. So let me just read for you the record that was established for these districts. 28 May, page 45. An African American Voting Rights Act protected district doesn't really do the African American community any justice. It actually benefits the African American community to not have those higher percentages. We're talking about a Voting Rights Act district that was mandated by law. 24 July. We have consistently applied the standard of effective representation. And I'm afraid if we go to this configuration, we will have significantly reduced the opportunity to have the community of interest here represented. Again, a new standard. Consistently applied the standard of effective representation, not one of the 7 number of criteria that were used. The net result of this is exactly what I talked about earlier, that the core focus is not on the urban core of Los Angeles. What this does is regionalize it into north, central, and south. It's actually not a bad redistricting plan. My issue, too, is that I've been all over the state looking at different communities of interest from north to south, and I have patiently listened and advocated for other ethnic groups and their ability to have districts where they could be elected and keep their communities whole. What this does is reduces the areas where African American candidates can be elected from 3 to 1, packed into that one district. I see the logic, the geographic logic in placement. Go ahead and, this was the alternative that we offered, or very close to it. It's actually a Assembly map, but a close congressional cousin, in which the districts were compact, contiguous, and made regional sense. And this comment is in response to that. I see the logic of the geographic logic in placement, but it effectively disenfranchises, disengages, or makes opportunity districts, again, illegal according to the 14th Amendment, less available for African Americans to run and be candidates at a congressional level in this part of the city. The VRA is now an instrument to be used against the African American population. And then lastly, a commissioner advocated that it's not just about Section 2 and Section 5. Section 2 and Section 5 is the Voting Rights Act that applies to redistricting. That's the Voting Rights Act. That's what applies to redistricting. So it is about Section 2 and Section 5. Fair and effective representation for minorities is not an option. It is part of our job. It's what we were put here to do. I want to go ahead and just go back really quickly. So those arguments were what led to this part of Los Angeles being drawn into 3-30-30-30. And as a result, all these other communities, to include Long Beach, their population had to be added to Orange County, and go in and divide Little Saigon and the Vietnamese community there. And had a dramatic shift all the way down to southern Orange County. So the effects from LA were huge. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm out of time. And I just want to leave you with a clip really quickly of the key testimony that the commission used to go ahead and violate the Voting Rights Act and draw those 3-30-30 districts. Plug in the, it's not coming out over the speakers.
And one thing I think that's been on my mind a lot is how my own personal experience is playing into how I'm deliberating and how I am moving about the state and prioritizing various criteria that we have been given. I was born into a black family. My black family was also a Latino immigrant family. Yes, we do exist. And I spent much of my childhood with Caucasian adoptive parents, right? So even though I check the black box, I have really had the opportunity, and I consider it a privilege, although I will admit there's times that in one's life that it's very painful, but I have really been able to see race and class through a multitude of different lenses. And the only way that you can live that way is not to advocate for one race, but to figure out how we can all get along. And I have done that all over the state. I have worked with you on every community across this state. And to have it insinuated that there is an African American voting bloc on this commission that is holding the commission hostage is infuriating. I have had that personally expressed to me outside of open session. I won't say much more on that matter. I'm just clarifying that my personal record throughout this process speaks for itself. That's not who I am, and that's not how I roll. With that, I'll turn and focus on the district in LA. These are very neat and tidy looking districts. But LA is not neat and tidy. It's messy, and it's diverse, and it's complicated, and these districts flat out do not do it justice. The challenging part of this exercise that I feel like we're really having trouble coming to terms with as a commission is that the Voting Rights Act is not just about Section 2, and it's not just about Section 5.
Okay, we're going to have to cut this short. My time's up. This was the alternative plan for Los Angeles that we created to show that it could be drawn in a way that complies with the law. It was voted down. Thank you for your time.